All right, Mushy Mushy peeps, this is Mr. Sanel coming at you with a Thursday, December 5th, 2019 lesson, 3-3, angles and triangles. Make sure your date is up here, 12/5. Julian, can you read us our objective, please?
Find angles in congruent triangles and find angles in isosceles triangles.
Yeah, so everything today is angles. Angles, talking about triangles. So let's start off with some vocab. This will be a tool that will help you solve these. You might not even need this tool because you're just so good at geometry, but here it is. It's a tool. A congruent statement. It's listing congruent shapes by their points in the correct order. So it has to be in the correct order. For example, if I had, you can come off here to the side if you want, if I have triangle ABC and I say that is congruent to triangle DEF, that means that AB and DE, those two segments are the same length. Those two segments, or those two line segments, are congruent. I also know that angle ABC and angle DEF are congruent just because of how this is written. I know that line segment BC is congruent to line segment EF. I know that line segment FD and CA are congruent. Just by writing out this congruent statement, I know every single angle that's congruent and every single line segment that's congruent just with a simple statement. Question, Sergio. Oh yeah, so let's talk about that too. So this thing right here, that is just congruent. It means congruent. It's an equal to sign with a little tilde or a little squiggly above it. Yes, Gunnar?
I can't make the pun if I'm pressing to do it.
Okay,
No, you can't do it, but I don't know, it's just harder for me to make the pun if I'm pressure.
well, no pressure. You don't have to do it. It just means that you're losing the XP.
I'm losing XP?
It's opportunity cost. You could have gotten the XP, but you didn't get it, right?
Wait, I can still make puns.
Yeah, please do. So I need to make sure that I match up the correct angle with the correct angle. For example, if I match up angle B with angle Z, that doesn't work because angle B and Z are clearly not the congruent angles. So you need to write it in the correct order. Does anyone want to take a shot at it? You're going to say something along the lines of triangle blah 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 is congruent to triangle blah blah blah. You have to get the letters in the correct order. There are a lot of different ways that you can write this. There's not just one right answer. There's a bunch of right answers. Sergio, go for it.
Triangle CBA.
CBA. Okay, so C is going to match up with? Not quite. So C is going to match up with? Z, and then B matches up with S, and therefore A matches up with P. There it is. There is the correct congruent statement. Again, every single one of these letters has to be matched up in the correct order. C matches with Z. You can see that. C and Z, they look to be the same angle. B and S match up. You can see that A and P match up as well. All of these match up, which means it is a correct congruent statement. You could have done a different one. I'll give it to someone else. Do it slightly different. Monse.
Angle triangle BAC.
BAC.
Triangle SPZ.
There it is. There's another one. Give her the XP. Thank you. I'll take your card. Someone do another one. There's a bunch of answers. See if you can get another congruent statement. Andres, go for it.
Triangle ABC.
ABC, sure, is congruent to
PZS.
PZ. Ooh, that one's not quite right. Because the reason why it's not right, A matches with P. I agree. A and P match up. Let's look at B and Z. B and Z.
We do S.
Oh yeah, so come back here and say
PSZ.
SE. Yeah, there you go. PSE. Wait, does that work? PS. Yeah, that works. Nice. PSE. There are a bunch of these. We'll just end with one more. Last call. Who wants to do the last of the? Well, it's not the last congruent statement. There's a bunch of them, but who wants to do the last one that we're going to write down? Who's got it? Sergio, you don't have your card anymore.
I have my card, but I don't know what it is.
Really?
Really?
Wait, Gunnar, you didn't participate yet? Okay, go for it, Gunnar.
Oh wait, I have.
Thank you. I'll help you out. Triangle.
Okay, triangle.
Choose something that's not here. ACB. Nice. Triangle ACB is congruent to triangle. Not quite. Okay, so
What?
A matches with S.
Yeah.
A matches with S. That's not quite right. A should match with P. So try it again. So it's not SCP. It should be A matches with what? P. There it is. PZS. Thank you. All right. So knowing how to write these congruent statements, if you are ever in trouble with doing these types of problems, write out the congruent statement and it will be really easy to know what's going on, although you might not even need to use that tool. So let's see an example. Why would I ever need to use this congruent statement? Because I need to figure out what is angle X. So I can tell that these two triangles are congruent. I'll tell you that they're congruent, but I need you guys to tell me why. And you'll say, oh, Mr. Sindel, they're congruent by this theorem. We just learned these theorems. So with a quiet raised hand, explain why these triangles are congruent. You could use, I think there's only one answer. Yeah, there's only one answer. Who's got it? Who has their card still? Do you have your card still, Fernando? Yeah, Fernando. Participated.
Triangle CAD is congruent to BAB.
Triangle CAB is congruent to, say it again?
CAB is congruent to BAB. Oh wait.
BA.
No, I did it for the CAB. I meant the CAD.
Oh, CAD? CAD is congruent to
BAD.
triangle BAD. That's not quite right.
Bad.
And let's talk about why in a second. But before I jump to Fernando, I'll let him think about that. So I don't want to write out the congruent statement yet. I want to talk about why they are congruent first of all. So you're going to either use angle, side, angle, side, side, side. You can't use angle, angle. You can't use side, side, angle. You can use angle, angle, side. Use some theorem like that to tell me why is this triangle and this triangle, why are they congruent? Who's got it? It's one of those four answers, right? Question, Sergio?
Can you do like vertical angles and like the
You can only use vertical angles when you have parallel lines. Technically, these are parallel, but because I haven't told you that, you somehow have to prove to me that they're parallel. If you can prove to me that they're parallel, then yeah, then you've unlocked the ability to use alternate interior angles. Andres?
You can do the theorem side, side, side.
There it is, side, side, side. This length is 7, this length is 7, this length is 9, this length is 9, this length is 13, this length is 13. I mean, if I look at these two triangles, all three of their sides are the same. So whatever our congruent statement is, once we figured out with Fernando, we can come back here and say this is true because or by side, side, side theorem. So now we have to figure out what the congruent statement says. So triangle CAD, perfect. We know that angle C matches up with angle B. So we can say, yes, C matches up with B. But we have to be careful here. And again, I'm going to kind of use Sergio's idea of, well, if they were parallel, then you could kind of use alternate interior angles, which means this angle would be congruent to which angle, Sergio? And that's kind of the way that you want to look at almost all of these types of problems, as they are kind of alternate interior angles. Which means angle, if I'm matching up angle A with a quiet raised hand, who has this? Angle A must match up with what, or not angle A, point A or vertex A should match up with what vertex over here? Andres?
Vertex D.
It is vertex D. And then finally, our last letter, who has it? Quiet raised hand. Josie? It is indeed A. All right, and that's perfect. So what we're trying to find is BAD, this angle BAD. So we're trying to find this BAD, this angle right here, matches up with which angle over here? Is it A or is it D? And you can just tell by the congruent statement it's which letter. Quiet raise hand. You're just matching up this letter with the other congruent statement over here. Jose? D, yeah. So it's always the third letter and the third letter in this case. Or if you chose the second letter, it could be the second letter. But yeah, it's D, which means the correct answer, x is equal to... Say again? X is equal to, is it 32 or is it 41? Yeah, 41. So let me run through this problem one more time, but x is equal to 41 degrees. So the first thing that we did was we said, okay, they are congruent because of side, side, side. And then we wrote out the congruent statement. CAD and BDA. The reason that we would want to write this out is to make sure that we're matching up the correct angles with the correct angles. If you want to skip this step altogether, that's fine. You can just say, okay, I can kind of see by alternate interior angles, this angle and this angle are going to match up, and then you're done. Yeah, it's 41. But you do need to make sure that they are still the same triangles. They are congruent triangles. All right, let's move on to the next one. Example number 3. And this is then we move on to isosceles triangles. So I need to figure out what this angle x is up here. So first of all, are these congruent triangles? Yes. Everyone is saying yes and nodding their head yes. Now the question is, with a quiet raised hand, why are these congruent triangles? Sergio?
Side, side, side.
Again, it was side, side, side. Again, 13, 10, 5, 13, 10, 5. So we know that they're congruent by side, side, side. So you can make a little note to yourself if you would like. You can say that they're congruent because side, side, side. Well, now that we know they're congruent, if I have congruent triangles, their angles must also be congruent. Question, Gunnar.
Can you do side, 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 angle?
4 letters. Side, side, side is enough. You don't need another angle.
Why?
We discovered that yesterday. You want me to run through it again?
No, I don't. But why? Why? It's not a pun. Why? Why didn't they make it 4?
It's a triangle, and triangles have 3 sides.
No, that's not true. That'd be
All right, I'm going to have to stop you right there. Okay, so I can figure out the remaining angle up here by knowing that there's 180 degrees in a triangle. So let's do this together, right? 48 plus 109. Quiet raise hand. Let's add those together. 48 and 109. Who's got this?
I got it. It's 180.
48 plus 109.
180.
Who's got this? Quiet raised hand.
150.
9 plus 8, 7. Carry the 1. Who has this? Quiet raised hand.
No, Mr. Snow.
Let me use my advantage shield.
Okay.
Wait, actually I want to use my Uno reverse card so you can lose HP.
You don't have the ability, like this is all you've got.
Just let me take the damage.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Sergio.
157.
It is indeed 157. All right, the next step is I need to find this missing angle by doing 180 minus that 157. And another quiet raised hand, who can do that one for me? I have to do some borrowing. I have to say, okay, that 8 turns into a 7. That turns into a 10. 10 minus 7, 3. Keep going, keep going. And you get quiet raised hand. Going. 23. Cool. So we know that this angle is 23, and therefore, with another quiet raised hand, x is equal to, Andres?
23.
There it is. X is equal to 23 because corresponding triangles have congruent triangles have congruent angles. So we can say x is equal to 23 degrees. I think the full theorem is corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. CPCT, I don't even remember the acronym. Anyway, let's move on to isosceles triangles. So you've seen isosceles triangles before. Nod your head, yes or no. Okay.
Wait, the one that's on top and the bottom.
Sure, give him the 20. All right.
Yes.
Triangles whose Okay, so these two angles down here are congruent. Does anyone know the term for these types of angles if they're on the, I mean, they're technically on the bottom in this case. It's just with a B and it's 4 letters. Anyone? It's not bro. Gunnar, you missed out on it. Julian's doing your work for you. What? Andres?
Bisector.
Yeah, that's definitely not a 4-letter word.
Dissector.
Base angle. You still get your 50 XP for attempting. If you have base angles that are congruent, so if you have these, at least 2 angles that are congruent, you're an isosceles triangle. Isosceles triangles also have this property that it has how many congruent sides? Take a guess here. Everyone just hold up some fingers. Is it 3 congruent sides? Is it 2? Is it 1? What makes sense in this case? So hold up 0 then, Julian. The majority of you have it incorrect. It's 2. Half of you got it correct, I should say. And these 2 segments are congruent. So make sure you have the correct tick marks on your isosceles triangle. So you can tell that it's an isosceles triangle if it has congruent sides or if it has congruent angles. Each implies the other. So if I come down here to example 4, is this an isosceles triangle? Everyone should nod their heads. No. Yes, because we have these 2 congruent sides. Therefore, we know that these 2 angles down here and down here are the same. If those 2 angles are the same, I can say that this angle down here is also 64 degrees. All right, someone solve for x. How am I going to do this? 1 person has it. 2 people have it. 3 people have it. Jose, talk to us. 64 plus 64. Oop. Okay. Okay, then what do I do with 128? Okay, so I'm going to do 180 minus that 128 to get 52 degrees. There it is. X is equal to 52 degrees. That's one type of problem you might have. And the other slightly harder type of problem is example number 5. And then we'll be done with the notes. So, is this an isosceles triangle? Everyone nods their head. You can't just be punny by just disagreeing with things that are clearly correct.
I was going to say a punk, but I don't want to.
Come on, that's a good point. Can I say that?
Go for it.
I saw all these triangles.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Oh, darn, we can't give him the XP because only Gunnar can get it. All right, so with a quiet raised hand, what is this angle? It's a variable. It's a hint. What is this angle in the bottom left of the triangle? Serge? Gunnar.
Dude, that's a pun.
That's not a pun. That's just speaking out of turn.
That's a pun. No, don't like. Oh.
Sergio, yes, what is it? It is indeed x degrees. So how am I going to figure out what x is then? Anyone have a strategy to do it? Gunnar?
Come on, let me say the right.
Subtract that from 180 and then divide your answer by 2.
Oh, subtract what from 180? Yeah, you can do that. So let's do it. If I do 180 minus 94, I get what, Gunnar?
96.
Careful.
86.
86. Okay.
86 divided by 2 would be 43.
And I'm going to do 86 divided by 2, and I get 43 degrees. There it is. So x is equal to 43 degrees.
Why would you have to divide by 2?
That is a great question, and I was hoping that someone would ask it, so thank you. Sure, that's a good question. We'll give him 50.
What?
Why do we divide by 2? And here's the answer. Unless someone else wants to answer it for us.
Oh, wait.
Andres, answer your own question. Go for it.
So, do you divide by 2 because there's 2 congruent sides?
Or two congruent angles.
Angles.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one way of thinking of it. Is that what you were going to say, Sergio?
Because it's one isosceles triangle.
Okay, so similar to what he said. So another way of explaining it is this too. So if I add all of those 3 angles, 94 plus x, if I add all 3 of these, I should add up to 180. If I simplify the left-hand side, I have 94 plus 2x is equal to 180. And again, I'm now doing what Gunnar said in the order that Gunnar said, which is first subtract 94 from 180, which is exactly what we did right up here. So if I subtract 94 from both sides, minus 94 from both sides, I'm left with 2x is equal to 86. And then Andres' question is pretty straightforward. Now, why do I divide by 2? It's because I have 2x is equal to 86, and therefore x is equal to 43. So you can set it up as an equation. It's very straightforward, or you can just use logic like Gunnar did. All right, give me a fist of 5 on our objective today. Find angles in congruent triangles, which was the front half, and find angles in isosceles triangles, which was this second half. Fist of 5. I'm seeing a 4, 4, 5. What are you at, Julian? A wiggly 3, wiggly 4, 4, 4, 4.5, 5, 4, 4. 5.5 and 4. Okay, nice. Those are some pretty high scores. All right, you may begin on Khan Academy.